Today when I woke up, I did not feel like writing. And some days are just like that. So the question is, how do we motivate ourselves to write on days when we just aren't feeling it? My name is Seth. I'm a full-time fantasy author who makes YouTube videos about being an author. And if that's something you're interested in, then definitely like and subscribe so you don't miss the next video. You know, some days I just really don't feel like writing. At the same time, it's obvious that writing is the single most important action that an author can take. So when I don't feel like writing, I feel guilty about the fact that I'm not writing. And that puts me in this terrible catch-22 where I can't muster the energy or the focus I need to actually write my story. But when I'm not writing my story, I can't really do anything else well because I've got this nagging feeling in the back of my head that I should be writing. And I know that I'm not the only person who feels that way. In fact, I was just talking to some other authors earlier this week about this very thing. And so that got me thinking, why is it that some days I'm able to successfully overcome this hurdle of not wanting to write, and other days I get stuck in this weird, uncomfortable position of not wanting to do something but feeling like I should do it? So I spent a little bit of time thinking about and reflecting on what do I do on the days when I'm successful, and what do I do on the days when I'm not successful? Out of all of that came 3 different things that I find myself trying over and over again, and sometimes they work. And so I wanted to share those with you. So the first thing that I do, and this is undoubtedly the most important thing, is that I always try to sit down to write. On days when I don't feel like writing, I find that if I don't sit down in my chair and start, regardless of how I'm feeling, I'm going to get nothing written. It's almost like on those days, I've pre-given up. I haven't even tried. I've said to myself, well, I don't really feel like it, and I'm probably not going to be able to do it anyways, so why even try? Well, when I do that, I give myself no chance to recover from this feeling of not wanting to write and actually getting something done. But on days when I say, you know, I really don't feel like writing, but I'm just going to go sit down in my chair and I'm going to give it a shot, I'm going to try, more often than not, I end the day with at least something. So it's clear to me that the most important thing that I can do when I'm not feeling like writing is sitting down in my chair, opening up my manuscript, and getting started. And sometimes the first half an hour or even 2 hours are really frustrating because I'm just not making the progress that I really want to make. But actually sitting down and starting is the only way to work through those rough hours and get to the point where my story is flowing again. But as I dug a little bit deeper into what I do on those days when I just don't feel like writing, I realized that often my feeling of not wanting to write actually comes from just having a lot of other stuff on my mind. And so on days when I do overcome that feeling and I actually get some words down, despite feeling like doing absolutely nothing, I've realized that one of the actions that I'm taking is getting everything in my head that is not writing out of the way. It's sort of clearing my mental space. And I know I've talked about this in other videos. And so I think it's really important if we don't feel like doing something, and this doesn't just apply to writing, this applies to everything in life. If we just don't feel like doing something, figuring out why we don't feel like doing it, and often it's because we just have so much more on our mind, so many other things pulling our attention in different directions. And if you can get those things out of your head, if you can write them down in a list, or if you can just put them aside and say, this is something I'm going to deal with later, maybe in the afternoon, if you're writing in the morning, or maybe this is something I'll deal with right now and then I'll be free to write. If you can get those things out of your head, if you can clear your head, I found that often I'll start getting back in the mood to write. I'll say, oh, I have the space now. I'd really like to continue on this story that I'm enjoying so much. And then the third action that I realized that I take on days when I'm able to overcome this feeling is reducing my goal. Now, I have pretty aggressive goals for my daily writing, and your goals might not be quite as big, but you can still use this tactic. So typically I'm trying to write about 4 chapters a day, and sometimes that's just not going to happen because of life circumstances. Like something will come up and I'll have to go and take a call, or I'll have to do something else. But on days when I just don't feel like writing, it's entirely possible for me to write 4 chapters, and I know that. And that actually contributes to some of my stress because I also don't feel like writing. So as I progressively fail to hit that goal of writing 4 chapters, it just gets more and more and more stressful, which doesn't lend itself to writing. So one of the things that I realized that I've done is on those days, I'll say, okay, if it's not 4 chapters, then 3 chapters. And then when I get to the point where I'm like, oh man, I don't think I'm going to hit 3 chapters, I say, great, no problem, 2 chapters. I'm going to get 2 chapters done. And then some days I'm like, man, I don't feel like writing at all, but you know what? I'm going to get 1 chapter done. And what's magic about that is that some progress is better than no progress. Some effort is better than no effort. And some words is better than no words. If your goal daily is to write 1,000 words, or maybe you've set out a specific day because you're like, I'm going to write, I have Saturday free, I'm going to write 2,000 words. If you get to that day and you're finding yourself just sort of overwhelmed with it all and unable to muster the energy and the focus you need to write, just reduce your goal. So you know what? I'm going to get 500 words done, or I'm going to get 200 words done. Anything else is bonus. Ultimately, the thing that is most effective at beating this feeling of, I just don't want to write, is actually writing. Because often when we start writing, we get caught up in the story, we trigger flow state, and then we start going. So those are some of the tactics that I use when I wake up and I just don't want to do it. Hopefully they're helpful for you. Let me know in the comments if you have any other tips that I can try applying to break out of this funk of I just don't want to write. Make sure to like this video if this is the kind of content that you want to see, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and share this video with another writer you know who is struggling to find the motivation to write. Maybe it'll help them too.